Hi, I just am coming to you guys today to talk a little bit about situations when mediation might not be appropriate. Okay, so people ask this all the time. Is there circumstances where, I have to get a lawyer? Mediation's not going to work. Really, my answer is no. They are there's very limited circumstances where mediation would not work. However, there is a very big difference when I say that between sort of a traditional divorce mediation process and something that's a holistic approach like what we do at Family Transitions. And it doesn't need to be, a one-stop shop like what I do. You can mediate with a spouse who you feel has been emotionally abusive. I hear all the time, my spouse is a narcissist, and I'm not a therapist, so I can't diagnose that behavior, but I certainly know intimately well from my personal experience, as well as helping dozens of families, what that pattern of communication and behavior looks like. So now I'm left with the philosophical question of, are so many of our spouses actually narcissists? Do we all have some narcissistic tendencies? Or is it that when our relationships are not healthy, that we, for some reason, almost naturally slide into what feels like narcissistic abuse, that we become embroiled in toxic communication patterns, which to both parties, and honestly, I have both. If one person is coming to me saying, my spouse is abusive, the other person is also saying that. So then I get left with, you know, I think you're both telling the truth. I think when a marriage is disintegrating, we are not ourselves. We are not thinking with our rational brain. We are reactive, and it does become abusive. To me, that is just more data, so to speak, as to why it is time to accept that divorce is actually the healthiest option for our family and moving forward in a healthy way and not increasing the trauma and the damage by a traditional divorce process is really key. So, a traditional divorce mediator will tell you, no, you cannot, if there's any abuse here, you cannot mediate effectively. And the reason they say that is because they're taking the position that they are not going to speak for you, that you have to have the courage to say what it is you're asking for. And in their right, you do have to have that courage. You need to feel like you're going to be supported in speaking up for what you want to have happen. Okay. The traditional divorce mediator, though, doesn't really do that. They act more like a therapist, like they collect all of your financial data, but they're not going to tell you whether or not you're making any wrong or right decisions or saying something that is maybe like far below what you might be entitled to in court or whatever. And that's why it can be a dangerous situation if you're not getting the proper support you need. So, how it can work in circumstances when, despite abuse, you can absolutely mediate effectively is when, number one, you feel you are fully educated, that you know what you have a right to in court or would your lawyer would be asking for in court. And there are very few things you have, quote unquote, have a right to in court. What you have a right to is to ask for those things. Then it's sort of up to the judge as to whether or not you're going to get it, right? But you still need to know, here's in the court process, here's what we would be asking for. Okay, that's super important in terms of making you feel confident that you are not going to say something against your best interest and that you can be comfortable in what your agreement actually is ultimately going to say. Okay, so that's the first thing. The education is absolutely key. The second part is that you feel as though if you speak up, the mediator is going to not support you in the sense that be impartial, but support you in the idea that this conversation needs to happen. Here's how a court would address this issue. So both of you should be getting educated in the same way at the same time. I believe that that makes it much more efficient and actually much smoother process, because if he's asking his lawyer and you're asking yours and neither one of you is hearing what they're saying, now it's coming through with secondhand, and you're not sure what the right answer might be. So if your mediator is giving you guys the education, then you feel as though, okay, I heard it, he heard it, and we can move forward from there. So you're not fighting amongst yourself, you're not opening yourself up to misinterpretation, and you're not fighting behind the scenes about what the right thing to do is. So the holistic approach that we do at Family Transitions is just that. You come into the course that all of my clients go through, you are going to have that education, and your spouse has the exact same education. And then if you're asking questions throughout the process, I am going to tell you, or Family Transitions is going to say, here's what equitable distribution means, or here's how, the factors that you need to look at for determining custody. So now you're not arguing in a vacuum, you're not subjected to their interpretation, and you can figure it out for yourself. So it also takes immense relief. It brings immense relief because you are not feeling as though you've got to fend for yourself and fight it out. The mediator is actually there to break those toxic communication patterns. They should be telling you that we're not going to be fighting at all about why we are getting divorced. We are looking forward towards fixing these problems. So if in fact you are getting divorced because it has felt very emotionally abusive and there's been patterns of behavior that are not healthy, we're not going to rehash those in a mediation session. So the key to Family Transitions and to a smooth divorce, regardless of how you're going through the process, is to make sure that neither party is feeling under attack. You come to the table universally sad and disappointed that you need to be there. And from that point, at least with this program, we say, you know what? We know that you're both sad. We know that you're both disappointed and scared. Nobody wants to be here. But you absolutely have a fundamental agreement. Maybe it's the first agreement in 3 years that you want to figure this out without causing any more damage to your family, either financially or emotionally. And the only way to do that is to stay out of the traditional divorce system and find a trusted third party mediator who you both trust to guide you. That means you have to believe that they're credible, that they know what they're talking about when they offer that guidance. I always say, absolutely fact check me. If you have any questions, you're always free to go talk to an individual lawyer to get that information, but you shouldn't have to also have a lawyer while you're going through the process, even if you are coming out of an emotionally abusive situation. The last point I want to make about that is that the key to why that really works is because when we don't allow you to look backwards and talk about all those, absolutely valid hurts and resentments that accumulate over time, when we focus you only forward, it allows both of you to step out of the fear and defense response that the typical divorce puts you in. And if you actually are dealing with a narcissist of any kind, or anyone who really is emotionally dysregulated so that they are lashing out in anger at you, the last thing that you want to do is put them on the defense in any way, even if it's just a perceived, if you actually weren't intending to do that, but they're perceiving it that way. And so the mediation process will try to deliberately calm those fears in terms of, you're not going to lose your family, you're not going to be emotionally, the bad guy or painted as the bad guy, you're not going to be financially destitute when this is over. And we really try to make people feel safe so that they can make some calm, bigger decisions. Two lawyers, they on purpose are designed to keep you in that defensive posture. And a mediator who says, I can't give you the answer to that question, you better ask a lawyer and then come back, they're not helping the situation. They're actually, really, that's a step towards very much derailing the process, or at least significantly increasing the expense and the emotional stress of the process. So the bottom line is, if you feel as though you are in one of these situations that's emotionally toxic, emotionally abusive, you're dealing with a narcissist, the key to moving forward and being able to mediate is just being very careful that you are aware of those fears that we all have, but that in an abusive situation, we don't have the tools to maturely articulate it. We are lashing out in anger. We're trying to hurt the person that hurt us, all of those things. So if we understand that that's what's happening, we can avoid some of those pitfalls. In fact, all of them. And then the other piece is, sometimes, they're going to still lash out. So we recognize those behavior patterns as well. That's the coaching piece of what I do. We say, okay, they're dysregulated, they're going to lash out sometimes. Some of this is about you learning how to protect yourself, you building a shield of kind of emotional armor around yourself, so that you recognize when that behavior manifests, what is happening, that it's not personal to you, that you are going to have the strength to take a step back, sort of literally weather that storm, and then we get back on track and can move forward calmly. But it is in no way a personal indictment to you. And hopefully it is a growing process where, as the stress of the home situation relaxes, so does some of that toxic behavior. You certainly will see that you're not subjected to it as frequently, because if nothing else, you are supported in building stronger boundaries and you know how to protect yourself from it. So just wanted to address that real quickly. The bottom line is, with the right mediator and the right education, you absolutely can complete a full, calm divorce process outside of the system and without lawyers in the vast majority of cases. So hope that helps.